And we're live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. Happy 2022. It's the first live show we have done this calendar year, which is very exciting. And it has been a bit of a quiet sort of period. Obviously, not much rugby, especially no rugby, local rugby going on at the moment, stuff like that. And we have had, unfortunately, I've worked the entire December, so I haven't had much time off to really sort of get stuck into some videos. But we are back, and this is the start of what is hopefully going to be a very, very big year for the channel. Last year was bigger than any of us probably could have ever imagined. And hopefully this year just sort of, continues from last year. We can try and hit some more targets, try and break some barriers, and just try and continue sort of navigating what has become a very exciting space for us in the sporting world of YouTube. But quite a lot to talk about today, and I think we are a weekend away. I'd call this almost the Christmas Eve of South African rugby for 2022, because this coming Friday or this weekend rather, rugby will hit South African shores once again with the start of the Currie Cup. A new dawn for the Currie Cup, really, when you think about it, because there is a Currie Cup that will run in conjunction with the United Rugby Championship. And as a result, will feature second string sides, new coach, completely separate coaching staff, at a whole different sort of environment and competition, really. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the four URC sides manage to compete, if they can compete in the Currie Cup with, very different squads compared to the likes of the Cheetahs, the Pumas, the Griquas, and just how the Currie Cup will pan off. And look, I think it's going to be trial and error, I think, for quite a while. I think in terms of trying to find the balance in terms of how we can schedule everything into the rugby calendar, and how best to sort of find the balance between when to play games, when not to play games, and sort of the workload for players. It's going to be quite a hit and miss, I think, situation for quite a while before we eventually, sort of come to terms with exactly what we're going to do with the rugby calendar. But one thing we do know is that the Currie Cup will kick off this coming weekend. No times or official dates have been confirmed. We have got the fixtures for them, though, so I'll go through them a bit later. But the big thing we're going to be talking about is Jake White, who's had quite a lot to say about the whole Springbok contract situation in terms of, or selection policy rather, in terms of selecting players who are based overseas. So we're going to talk about that quite a lot. There's a rumor about Vincent Tshituka potentially leaving the Lions. We'll talk a little bit about that, and kind of just give you a bit of a rugby forecast on what we can expect in the next sort of month, and what sort of rugby we can expect, which will sort of obviously give you an indication what sort of content you can come to expect from a rugby side on the channel. Cricket-wise, we are obviously going to be doing a preview tomorrow of the third and final test between South Africa and India. We're going to be doing a live watch-along on Tuesday morning, which is going to be very exciting. We haven't really done a live test watch-along, so it's going to be quite cool. And so yeah, we're just going to be doing a lot of new things this year. We had a lot of fun last year experimenting with a couple of things. Some worked, some didn't work as well as we wanted to work. But one thing for sure is that we're never going to die. We're never going to die wondering, So expect plenty of stuff to come up. But yeah, so let me know where you're watching from. Let me know what you think about the whole Jake White fiasco. That's going to be sort of the main topic of conversation. Yeah, probably won't be a very long show, because obviously, with no rugby actually being played at the moment, there's only so much we can really talk about. But happy New Year, Contender. Welcome back to the channel and stuff like that. Hope you're having a great break. But let's talk about Jake White. Let's talk about and what he had to say. And I think a lot that needs to be addressed is the position he's coming from, and how he's always sort of treated this issue in the past as well. Because I think that, if we're being brutally honest here, I don't think Jake White has a lot of decent standing in terms of being able to sort of come out and say that the Boks should not be selecting overseas-based players. Coming from a coach who has spent a lot of time overseas, signed a lot of overseas players, and took a lot of players away from our shores. And I think that we have to look at that. And now, is this now really for the greater good of SA Rugby, or is this a coach who is losing players to overseas teams like he did many years ago, and now getting frustrated at that? Because there is that sort of that second sort of that different aspect to it, the fact that he's just lost Wade Vermeulen, he's just lost Trevor Nukane, and they won't be the last. There'll be a lot of players who will be moving overseas and stuff like that. Now, is it the pot calling the kettle black with Jake White to be able to come out and say how we need to stop selecting players? Because he claims that he was responsible for bringing players back from overseas, and even that they're doing now with the Bulls, but he was also responsible for taking players overseas. So basically his entire sort of argument is he said that we need to stop selecting players who are based overseas. He said that we basically had to adapt with the times because of what was happening under Alistair Garcia, and when Rusty Rasmus came in, and suddenly we allowed all these players to come back. But he says that this current cycle of Springboks who are already based overseas, he says obviously we can't change that, but we need to make sure that the next cycle of Springboks all play their rugby down in South Africa. Now, I don't think you're going to find a South African out there who's going to sit there saying we don't want our best players playing in the country. Of course we do. Nobody wants to see our players go overseas. Obviously there's a lot of positives towards in terms of the standard of rugby they play, in terms of the experience they get to different conditions, stuff like that. We don't want to see our best players playing overseas. We want to be able to drive down to Loftus and see our best players. You want to be able to go to Ayers Park and see 6 or 7 Springboks on display. That's what we all want. There's no doubt about it. But the practicality of that is it's just not feasible right now. I did a video towards the end of last year that the salary cap will be extended and will be sort of be going up in the next couple of years. And they can actually contract certain more players as I think development players, stuff like that. So it does sort of mean they can URC franchise can up their squad. There's a bigger budget even for the Griquas and Pumas and Chiefs and stuff like that. But it's still baby steps. We're still very far away from ever reaching the salary cap that is being imposed on the Premiership and the top 14, and even Ireland. And I think that'll always have to be the first sort of step, try and match Ireland's and the salary cap. So in theory, that we shouldn't be losing players to Irish clubs because in theory, whatever they can pay our players, we can pay our players. But we've got a long way to go before we can ever match, the likes of top 14, the likes of Premiership. Now, when and until we get there, this is the reality. And I think the big sort of question you have to ask is, it's all very well saying this in theory, but put yourself in the player's shoes. You are 23, 24 years old. You are coming up to the prime of your career. You've now established yourself. You're now an exciting talent. You now need to take the next step. The next step is obviously play international rugby. Now, you obviously want to play for the Springboks. Everybody wants to play for the Springboks. Everybody that's born and raised in South Africa wants to play for the Springboks. That is always the ultimate goal. But are you going to sacrifice millions of rands to play for the Springboks? I used the example of Cheslin Kolbe this morning. Now, Cheslin Kolbe is earning close to 20 million rand a year, which he will not earn here. I mean, it's almost a third of the salary cap. So he would be taking a huge pay cut if he were to come back and play in South Africa. Now, obviously, you want to play for Springboks, and everybody sort of sits there saying that the patriotic thing is to do, and sport is not about money, but sport is about money. This is their profession. These people are not accountants. These people are not doctors. These people are not anything, whatever. This is their profession. Yes, they obviously love playing the game, but this is how they pay their bills. And from a job point of view, you've got to pursue the path that'll put you in the best position for your future. At the end of the day, no matter what career you put in, you get offered a large amount of money to go somewhere, which could potentially set you up for many years to come. You're always going to take that route because it's sensible. You have to think about yourself. You have to think about your family. And, you can only sort of say no to the money on the basis of wanting to represent your country for so long. It's just not realistic to think about these players and to reasonably expect them to pass up it's literally millions of rand to not go overseas just to play for the Springboks. So basically, the choice is you want to be, look, all things relative. You're not going to be a poor, playing in rugby. These players based in South Africa can earn a lot of money, but it's not the same money. It's nothing near the same money. It's a whole different bracket when you start playing overseas. So how long do we have to sit there expecting players to earn a fraction of what they could because of the pride and because it's right, which would be exactly what would be the expectation were we to listen to Jake White's recommendations. Yeah, so Katana said apparently there was a small rumor that Bosch could be leaving Sharks. Jake White one time brought Rugby stature to the Sharks, possibly a bit one-dimensional. Kibu says, with URC, it doesn't matter. They're playing locally or abroad. We still get to see them. Yeah, and once we start playing against in the Challenge Cup and the Champions Cup, we'll obviously start to see them a lot more. When we start getting teams like, Toulon, Toulouse, Leicester, Saracens, Harlequins, getting all these players coming down and playing in South Africa in Champions Cup and Challenge Cup, which will hopefully happen not this season, but next season, 22-23, which would be exciting. So there's a certain amount of that as well. I also think that with URC, if it all goes to plan, I think there's a lot of negativity around URC. I personally quite enjoyed it, and I think it's very much a competition that will only grow. I do think that in theory, with the financial trade-offs, hopefully we will be able to sort of continue increasing our salary cap so that we can start keeping more players. But I think it's just far too dangerous to sit there and say off the bat, we need to stop selecting players from overseas, because it just will not work. Players will not stay. I'm telling you right now, if you said tomorrow you are not going to the World Cup unless you come play in South Africa, there won't be this sudden, migration of players from overseas back here. You're not going to see, Faf de Klerk, Andre Pollard, Cheslin Colby, Trevor Nyakani now, Evan Etzebeth, Dwayne Vermeulen. You're not going to have all these guys suddenly jumping on a plane and back here signing contracts with the Lions just to go to the World Cup. Especially the older players who are now in the final few years. Why do you think Dwayne Vermeulen's going to Ulster? He's going there to pick up a last paycheck. Why is Trevor Nyakani going to top 14? He's going there to pick up a last paycheck. He's towards the twilight of his career. Now the problem is, there's you can always sort of go the route of Australia. We have to play a certain amount of tests, and then you're allowed to go play overseas. Again, it doesn't really work. They've had to cancel it basically to become competitive. Any attempt to try and prevent players from going overseas has come at the detriment of the national team. Every attempt. I also think that there's a certain amount of value in going overseas, because I think that there are certain players who just need to get away and need to find their feet again. There's certain. I mean, Jasper Wiese wasn't really in the Bok radar until he went overseas. I started storming it down for the Leicester Tigers. There's a couple of players like that, who go overseas. Maybe they find the right club or whatever and the right fit, and suddenly they're playing some fantastic rugby and they reignited their career. Andre Esterhuizen's really pushing quite hard for the Springbok jersey, but the reality is, whilst we all want to have our best players playing, I mean, and look, I'm speaking from a Lions fan's perspective, where we have been ransacked more than most in terms of the amount of players who have been taken, and now potentially maybe another one. But it will not work. We know this. It just can't work. And I think that the biggest problem, is I don't think Jake White is sitting there as a patriotic South African thinking, I want to save the Springboks, therefore we need to do that. It's all about he needs to keep his players. And he's worried that he's going to lose Albert Lowe, that he's going to lose Ruan Nokia, that he's going to lose Johan Kobbelaar, that he's going to lose, a whole bunch of players who are very young, good young players coming through at the Bulls. And I think that's probably more a concern for Jake White than really sort of making sure the Springbok players are all playing in South Africa for the sake of the product that South Africa can offer. I don't think he's sitting. I mean, he's talking about the Curry Cup sponsorship. Does Jake White really care about the Curry Cup sponsorship? Or does Jake White care about making sure he's got his best 20, 30 players in the squad? Maybe he does, but I'm just saying, it's for someone who's been overseas quite a lot and did bring players back overseas. It's just ironic that now that he's in South Africa, now he's feeling the brain drain. Now all of a sudden there's a talk that we have to stop doing it. And I do think that we do need to try and stop the brain drain to a certain degree, but it's inevitable that a certain amount of players. My biggest thing is that we need to stop the brain drain being for free. We need to stop being ransacked and with no compensation. We have been expropriated. There have been no compensation whatsoever for so many years. We need more deals like Trevor Nyakani. That's what I was saying in my video today, is that if we are going to lose players, if players are going to go overseas, I want transfer fees. I want collaboration, Establish your relationship with an overseas club and say, right, you can have this player for the season. You can have him on loan for the season. I want that player, we need to be innovative about this. We can't just sort of sit there and as Jake White described it, and I agree, we can't just be academies for overseas clubs who then come here like a shopping window and go, I need a hooker, so I'll take him. I need a flank, so I need to take him. Yada yada yada. Let's be proactive. Let's go and say, right, let's establish these relationships. Let's go and create I think it looks like the Saracens and the Sharks are going to have an interesting sort of a relationship there. Now, could we see a situation where could be a couple of loan deals? With youngsters coming out here or youngsters going over there and stuff like that, and a bit of a give and take situation. I think that's something that's worth exploring. Chester says, Happy New Year's, everyone. He clearly didn't put himself in the coach's boots when he was up in the north, and now that he is down here, he says exactly. Tennis says Damian Willemse should go overseas or change teams. He is not getting real chances at the Western Province. Maybe if he goes overseas, he could refine his skills as a utility given games in every position. And Louis says they are making double to triple their money overseas. So Yeah, exactly. And you can't blame them, can you? I'm at the age, well, I would be now considered going into my prime, sitting at 25, 26 years old. And I got to tell you right now, if somebody came to me and said, listen, I'm going to pay you 10 million Rand to come play in France, I'm out of here. It's tough out here. And people have got families to feed, and obviously no professional rugby player at the URC level is poor, but the money you just can't compare, and you can't ask them to be patriotic and willingly give up all this money, um, for the sake of patriotism, because patriotism can't pay bills. Unfortunately, you don't get to go into the car dealership and say, I'll have that car, thank you very much, and I'm paying you with my patriotism points. Doesn't work like that. So I just don't think it'll ever happen. But we do need more proactive about how we can lessen the extent of it and just make it work for us. I think that's the problem, is that we've just been on the receiving end and we just haven't been able to hasn't been able to work for us. You've got to see now. People are saying, and I suppose it does to a certain degree. It does work for us in terms of them being able to pay the big salaries, so that SA Rugby doesn't have to worry about paying big salaries. But if they weren't paid the big salaries, we'd be paying their salaries anyway. So I understand that argument, but I just don't think it's that relevant. But let's start seeing more of the money that is being invested into these players being invested back into our clubs. Come and buy our players. Don't just take them. Come buy them. If you want this player, give us the money for him. So that every year, we've got maybe URC franchises making 5 to 6 to 7 million Rand in transfer fees. Even more than that, It says if David Williamson gets time at 10, 13, 12, 11, 14, 15, improves his kicking skills and improves his ability, there's more security for after France stay. We could even try Jesse Creel. He's played 10 before. I'm not one. I refuse to see Jesse Creel at 10. 15 at a push. Well, I'd like to see him back 15, actually, but yes. Lewis says Esther should sign players for long term, then if players go overseas, Esther get money. Exactly. S-Box says White is right. Toulon Boss thinks Esther is a liability. He's more injured than anything. Will play for SA. It works both ways. Players need to rest to recover. Playing 365 days a year, you can't. Yeah, I mean, there is that to a certain degree, but we are now aligning our calendars with Europe anyway. So even if Etzebeth were to play for the Bulls tomorrow, he would be playing at the same time as Toulon now do. So that sort of come out the window as soon as we started aligning our calendars. What will be interesting is if these players aren't available as much as these players at the sort of the big franchises want, is maybe it reduces it. Maybe they don't sign as many players overseas because they aren't available as often as they'd like them to be. But yeah, I think the fact that we've aligned our calendars means that you, in theory, play the same amount of rugby if you're playing for the Lions as if you're playing for Cardiff. Because your calendars are like you play in the same competitions, literally in the same competitions. If we then make the Challenge Cup and the Champions Cup, you will play in the exact same competitions as everyone. So yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I just think it's a nice idea. It's a little bit pie in the sky for me and not very practical. But as Louis said, I don't understand the concept of signing one of the best Springboks of the last decade and then being upset that he has to play for the Springboks. What did you think was going to happen? That he was not going to play for the Springboks? There are international windows. There are international duties. That's always going to be the case. I mean, you can't sign a player and then be surprised when he's not available because he's playing for the country. When what's the reason you sign him? You sign Ibn Etzebeth as that fantastic Springbok lock. He's one of the best locks in the world. That's what you signed. You can't sign him and then be like, yeah, he doesn't really play much for us, does he? It doesn't really work like that. But yeah, so speaking of players who could be on the move, I'm not happy about it, but I read a rumor that the Harlequins are interested in Vincent Tshituka, which would be that would be a sucker punch. Hey, that would be a massive sucker punch to the gut if you were to go to the Harlequins. First of all, he would be absolutely brilliant there, and he would join he'd join Tyron Green, ex-Lions player, Stefan Levis, ex-Lions player, and he's very good friends with Tyron Green, which doesn't help. because now you're going to be getting all the stories about how awesome it is playing for the Harlequins, how nice it is having all the money that you're earning. And look, and I was talking about somebody who won't have international commitments. He doesn't have international commitments because he doesn't currently have a passport. But if he goes, I'll tell you, the reason to keep supporting the Lions will just start plummeting. Because all we do is, as the Lions fans, you wait for the next couple of youngsters to come through, they get good, and they leave. Far more than the Bulls and the Sharks and the Stormers. So they can look on the Stormers have had quite a bit of a bad row of the game, but they still got a blooming Springbok front row. But yeah, so I saw that rumor. I haven't seen it in too many official sources. I think it's probably still early stages. You never know. Some people sort of suggest it could be a tactic to try and get a bigger contract out of the Lions, in which case the Lions must pay whatever he needs to be paid, because you can't afford to lose players like that. The Lions have 3 or 4 Springbok prospects, and he is the biggest one at the moment. He is probably the Lions' biggest player. If there's one player you do not want to lose as the Lions right now, it's Vincent Tshituka, because he's been the best player of the franchise for a number of years now. So that'll be quite frustrating and upsetting if that does happen. But if we hear anything more about that, we'll keep you up to date. But yeah, so we've got the Currie Cup starting this weekend. I saw that Cheetahs are playing against the Griquas, I think, this past weekend in a warm-up game. But in terms of the fixtures, so we haven't got final times and dates, or whether it's on Friday or Saturday. But this weekend, we will see West Province taking on the Bulls. West Province taking on the Lions in Cape Town. Cheetahs taking on the Griquas in Bloemfontein, and the Pumas taking on the Bulls. No Sharks involved this weekend. Now, these matches will either be on Friday or Saturday. Friday the 14th or Saturday the 15th. We will be live for these games. So whenever they are... whenever they confirm stuff like that, obviously we'll be live for those games. We'll get our watch-alongs and stuff going again. And then after that, pretty much go into sort of the Wednesdays and a couple of weekends, but a lot of Wednesday rugby for the Currie Cup. So that you're not playing, URC Currie Cup on the same day, which is quite cool actually, because we get to watch URC on the weekend, we get to watch Currie Cup on the week, which will be a lot of youngsters, will be a lot of exciting talent. So I'm actually quite excited for it. But so then after that will be next week Wednesday. The province, West Province playing Bulls, Griquas are playing Sharks and Durban, and the Lions are playing the Pumas. Then it's the Wednesday after that. Well, actually, there's a bit of a break. Then it's Wednesday, the 2nd of February. Sharks versus Province, Bulls versus Cheetahs, Griquas versus Pumas. The match days after that are 18th, 19th of February, 4th and 5th of March, 16th of March, 23rd of March, 6th April, 15th, 16th April, 6th, 7th of May, 13th, 14th of May, 27th, 28th May, Friday, Saturday, June, Friday, 10th, 11th June, the semi-finals are on the 18th of June, and the final is on the 25th of June, followed by the Carlin Champions match. So the Currie Cup will literally align exactly with the URC in terms of when we're going to finish. So it starts now in January and it'll finish in June. So it'll be a very long Currie Cup to what we're used to, and a very different Currie Cup in terms of the player availability. Now, if we're looking at the United Rugby Championships, because obviously you don't necessarily see your best player. I don't think you're going to see Siaklisi playing too much Currie Cup rugby this season. But for example, if we look at this weekend, there's no URC action for the South African sides. So there's no reason why those players can't be playing in the Currie Cup. Let me just bring up those fixtures once again. Now, obviously, you're not going to have players playing Friday, Wednesday. So they will have to, the bulk of the squads will have to be quite different. But for example, you've got Wednesday, the 19th of January, and then the South African sides are in action, on Friday, the 28th of January. So you could easily use the same squad there. It's sort of when it goes after that. So you've got the 2nd of February, and then you've got Saturday, the 12th of February. So the Currie Cup is, as far as they can, being scheduled with the URC in mind. There aren't too many games that overlap at this stage, but things are so fluid at the moment that I think, there will be weekends where they do overlap. For example, on Friday, the 25th of March, 26th of March, South African URC sides are playing, and there are games in the Currie Cup on the 23rd of March. So there will be probably majority different squads, but there's no reason why a fringe player can't be playing on the Wednesday for the Currie Cup side and stuff like that. So it's going to be quite interesting to sort of see how they balance these squads and what players we see where. And as a coach, do you commit to one squad and you leave that squad and you say, no, you guys are the URC squad? Do you stay that side? We've got our own thing, or do you kind of sort of mix and match, blend it in, bring players in and out, and try and use as many resources as you can? So that should be quite interesting. If Vincent Tshituka goes to Harlequins, people could call him up like fellow Congolese. Krachashi went, no. He's a Springbok. Vincent Tshituka is only playing for Springboks. That's as soon as our Home Affairs gets A into G, that is what's happening. None of that. No time for that kind of talk. His boss said the USA sponsor company that wants to pump money to SA must be approached. The boss said, how can the world champions have so much less money than the English that are not even number 2 in the world? Well, this is the thing. And hopefully with MVM Holdings coming into the Sharks, we're going to get some more investment. Somebody needs to buy the Lions. I need to go find a sheikh. I need to go to Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Dubai or Abu Dhabi. I need to go find myself a sheikh, and they need to come and buy the Lions. And just invest all the money in them. Just build a new stadium. Just do everything. Nice academy, and just turn us into a Manchester City. I have no issue with that whatsoever. But I agree, we need more money pumped into the SA Rugby so that we can push the salary cap. We start being a little bit more frugal with our money instead of being so tight all the time. How would your Stormers Currie Cup team look like? Well, I'd have to see who's available, who's not. I mean, I don't know what the URC squad's going to look like at this stage. Because the Stormers tend to have quite a few injuries at the best of times. But S-Box is SA Box going to kick ass this year. I think we're going to have a good year as well. I'm very excited about the year we're going to have. I think we had a very nice return to National Rugby last year. I'm very excited to see how he progressed this year. I think game plans will start changing. I think you'll start playing significantly better rugby this year. And I think that as you move towards the World Cup, we're going to hopefully see a couple of new faces in the squad during the June Test series. Hopefully, at this stage, Wales coming down. We should be having SAA games as well, which would be very cool. So there's going to be a lot of rugby. The Sevens are also back quite soon. They are back in training, and Justin Kadalt is back, which is very cool. Let me see when the Sevens officially. I think it's this last weekend of January. I don't think it's next weekend. HSBC Sevens. Right, let's see when we are back for the Sevens. I'm pretty sure it's definitely January. I just don't know if it's next weekend or if it's the final weekend. And that at the moment we're kind of just walking onto it. So long may that can continue. The Dubai 7th on November, December, 21st, 23rd January. Right, well there we go. So next weekend, what's coming on? The following weekend, 22nd, 23rd of January, we are in Malaga. Weekend after that, we are in Seville. And then we take a break until the end of February. 26th, 27th, 5th, 6th of March, 9th, 10th of April, May. So still quite a lot of sevens to go. But at the moment, you look at that log, and we are dominating it. But very much looking forward to seeing the Sevens get going again, because that team at the moment is just looking unbelievable. Sitting on 44 points at the top of the table. Next up is Argentina, then Australia, USA. I mean, Fiji, who are often our biggest competitors, are sitting down on 23rd. Obviously, we haven't had New Zealand playing. Hopefully, they can get back into it now if they just relax the COVID rules and stuff like that for travel. It's going to be a fun 7th season. I think we're going to do quite well. So hopefully this is the year of SA Rugby. I think last year was to be fair, it was the year of SA Rugby. Finished number 1 in the world in both 50s and the 7s format. So maybe we just need to add the women's ones to that, and then we're cooking with gas. Let's call Elon Musk, former Joburger, should invest in his old rugby team. Look, I mean, there he went to Pretoria Boys High, so he'd probably invest in the Bulls, but I don't think Elon Musk wants anything to do with South Africa rugby. I just have a hunch. I could be speculating, but I just don't get the feeling that he would ever give a damn about SA rugby. Don't think it's particularly high up on his list of priorities. But I suppose you never know. You never say never. Luke says, thoughts on the Esther Hazen call up? Who the squad is your play? So I actually want to do a live show on Tuesday, and I actually want to talk about Esther Hazen in particular. So I'm actually probably going to dedicate the show to Tuesday, looking a little bit more ahead. Because I don't really have much time now, but I think it's a very interesting discussion. And the reason also is I want to watch the Harlequins game from this weekend, because it's a very, very hot debate. So I think on Tuesday we're going to actually have I'm going to dedicate a segment to the show to talking about Andre Estes and whether he does fit in the squad or what, because it's been very interesting how he's playing so well that people can't ignore him, but can he get into the squad? Where does he fit in? What is the story with Andre Esterhazen? But we're going to call it there. I know it's been a bit of a shorter show than usual, but first of all, there's not much going on. Second of all, I've got other things to do, unfortunately. But I want to get on here and have our first live show, break the ice, get going for the year. So we will obviously have this a lot more frequently when the rugby season gets going. This weekend, we'll be back with at least 3 watch-alongs with the Curry Cup. That's in the URC as well. And then next week, Wednesday, we'll have Curry Cup, then URC, then Curry Cup action or Sevens action on the weekend. So we got plenty of rugby over the next couple of months. But we also going to do cricket watch-alongs. We'll be live on Tuesday morning for the first session of the third and final test, which should be quite cool. So come and join us then. Please do smash like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. If you are new, welcome to the channel. To everybody else, hope you guys had a fantastic festive period. Hope you guys had a very good first week back at work. If you're going back tomorrow, good luck. Here's to a fantastic week ahead. And hopefully, let's just start breaking bigger numbers. And we hit 10K, so let's try and see if we get 15K this year or 20K, or let's see how big we can go over the next 12 months. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you guys all very soon.